Hello, Libra. This isn't just another horoscope video. This is a sacred message, delivered in divine timing, and if you've landed here today, there's a reason far greater than coincidence. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like God's been quiet lately? Like your prayers have floated into silence, unanswered? Because from May 29th to June 2nd, that silence is about to break. And what comes through could change everything. Mercury Kazemi happens on the 29th, the exact moment when Mercury, the planet of communication and divine messages, sits at the heart of the sun. It's one of the most powerful days of the year for revelation, truth, and spiritual downloads. And for you, Libra, the energy this week isn't subtle. It's intentional. It's disruptive in all the right ways. And it's here to bring a breakthrough in both love and money. But even deeper than that, it's offering you something you've been secretly asking for: clarity, alignment, and a path you can finally trust. This week's energy is not soft or slow. It comes fast, and it comes with purpose. Something will be revealed to you, something you need to see clearly before you make your next big move. Whether it's a decision you've been avoiding, a truth you've been feeling but couldn't explain, or an answer you've been praying for in silence. It's coming. And it's coming now. And here's what's even more powerful: it's not just what's coming, but who you're becoming as it arrives. You're not here to just watch and hope. You're here to receive and act. This video is your compass, a gentle yet honest guide through the cosmic terrain of the week ahead. And no matter what you're facing right now, know this: God is not ignoring you. The universe is not done with you. This is your turning point. Before we dive deeper, let me take a moment to thank you, truly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Every like, every comment, every new subscription is more than a number. It's a soul choosing to align with a community that sees beyond surface-level predictions. You are part of Zodiac Whisper Tarot Now, a space where astrology, intuition, and divine timing meet to empower your spirit. And Libra, beloved seeker of balance and truth, trust me when I say this: you'll want to stay with me until the very end of this reading. Because what's unfolding is not just beautiful, it's prophetic. And by the time we reach the final card, you may find yourself realizing that the very thing you thought was lost was actually being prepared for you all along. So settle in. Take a breath. And if something in your heart has already been stirred, drop a 222 in the comments, your sacred sign of alignment, protection, and peace. Let's begin. Sometimes, clarity doesn't arrive as a gentle whisper. It shows up as a pause that stretches too long, a conversation that stings, or a realization that settles into the heart like a stone. This week, Libra, that clarity is not meant to shake your peace, but to awaken your deeper truth. With Mercury Kazemi shining its golden spotlight on your sector of awareness and relationships, the universe isn't just sending information, it's offering you the kind of insight that transforms how you choose to move forward. As a sign ruled by Venus, you often seek harmony, beauty, and connection. You're gifted with the ability to see both sides, to weigh, to pause, and to reflect before choosing. But what happens when the balance you've built is resting on a foundation that no longer supports you? When the peace you've created is born more from avoiding discomfort than honoring your truth? That's when justice, your tarot archetype, comes in, not as a punishment, but as a powerful reminder that true balance includes honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Justice is not about blame. It's about accountability, first with yourself, then with others. This week's energy calls you to take an honest inventory of where you've been compromising too much. What conversations have you been avoiding? What decisions have you been delaying out of fear of rocking the boat? You don't have to change everything overnight, but you do have to look at what's real. You can no longer afford to stay in spaces where your truth has to shrink in order for someone else to feel safe. And that's not an act of rebellion, it's an act of self-respect. The presence of the Lovers, Temperance, the Fool, and the Star reminds us that love, patience, courage, and faith all work together when we step into alignment. Relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or even professional, are being reevaluated under this energy. You may feel a pull to move on, to speak up, or to redefine the terms of how you show up for others. Don't rush, but don't resist either. The Fool encourages you to walk forward with open hands and an open heart. The Star tells you that healing comes when you release what isn't aligned. You may find that this week brings endings. You may say goodbye to an idea of how something should have been. And that's okay. As a wise teaching reminds us, sometimes God doesn't remove things to punish us, but to protect the path He's prepared ahead. Trust that. Trust the timing. Trust yourself. You are being guided, not away from love or peace, but toward a version of them that's built on truth, not illusion. There is a quiet power in accepting what no longer serves your growth. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you're listening, deeply, finally, to the wisdom within you. And in doing so, you make room for better conversations, deeper connection, and decisions that honor the wholeness of who you've become. So if things feel shaky, remember, balance isn't about everything staying still. It's about staying centered as the world rearranges itself around what's true. Keep your feet grounded. Keep your heart open. And let this week be the turning point where your honesty becomes your compass. The moment you stop hiding from your truth is the same moment you begin building a future that actually fits. Not every blessing arrives with fireworks. Some come quietly, unexpectedly, like a deposit you didn't anticipate, or a message that shifts the weight of your future in a single sentence. This week, Libra, the universe may surprise you with a financial opportunity that seems to fall right into your lap. A quick payment, a contract approved without resistance, a gift from someone who once owed you nothing. It might feel like the break you've been praying for, and in many ways, it is. But as always with divine timing, what matters most is not just what you receive, but how you handle what's been entrusted to you. Fast money can feel exhilarating. It can stir excitement, even relief. But it can also unearth a deeper truth, how you relate to abundance, how you treat it, and whether you're rooted enough to direct it wisely. Financial blessings are not only about gain, they're a mirror of growth. And growth asks you to look at your patterns with honesty. Do you spend to fill a void? Do you invest from fear or from vision? These questions aren't meant to shame you, but to align you. Because the universe isn't testing you, it's trusting you with more than what you had before. There's wisdom in pausing before reacting. When something comes quickly, it can also leave quickly, unless you anchor it in intention. Think about this: wealth, when received without purpose, becomes noise. But when paired with clarity, it becomes a tool for movement. You don't need to fear this blessing, you need to meet it with grace, with groundedness, and with the understanding that you are not who you were when you were last struggling. You're no longer scrambling in survival mode. You're entering a chapter where you're asked to manage, to multiply, and to sustain. And perhaps more importantly, you're being reminded that provision doesn't always follow effort in a linear way. Sometimes, it shows up as a divine reward for simply staying faithful. For continuing to show up when no one was watching. For learning hard lessons with a humble heart. You may not always feel ready when blessings come, but know this: if it's arrived now, it's because something in you has shifted enough to receive it differently this time. From an astrological perspective, this week's cosmic lineup nudges your values into the spotlight. With Mercury Cazimi happening under the influence of Gemini's sharp mind, and Venus encouraging both balance and beauty, your approach to money is being refined. Not just in how much you have, but in what that money reflects about your self-worth. Because when you believe in your value, you no longer chase, you attract. You no longer spend to prove, you give to expand. You no longer fear loss, you operate from trust. In quiet teachings passed down through time, there's always a reminder that true wealth is a responsibility, not a reward. And God doesn't deliver something sacred to you unless He knows you're capable of holding it with wisdom. So this isn't just about the money. It's about who you become in response to it. It's about the integrity you show when no one's watching. It's about whether you let temporary gain shake your eternal principles. You're being elevated now, not just financially, but morally, ethically, spiritually. And you don't need anyone else to validate your readiness, because your actions this week will speak louder than your intentions ever could. So let the money come. Let the door open. But let your wisdom walk through it first. Because the path that's unfolding isn't just paved with gold, it's paved with character. Some truths are harder to admit when love is involved. It's not that we don't see them, it's that we hope they'll change. That somehow, if we just give more, bend more, soften more, the relationship will meet us halfway. But Libra, the celestial energy surrounding you this week isn't here to keep you in a loop of pleasing and pretending. It's here to reconnect you with the version of love that honors your whole self, not just the parts that are convenient for someone else to accept. The Lover's card, so often misunderstood, is not just about romance or attraction. It's about choice, deep, soul-level choice. It asks, will you align with what feels true, or stay where you feel safe? And in a week where both justice and temperance are also present, that choice is amplified by themes of integrity, balance, and inner peace that can't be faked anymore. You may find yourself at a crossroads, not necessarily because someone else is failing you, but because your own soul is quietly insisting that you stop betraying yourself to keep something that no longer fits. This kind of revelation doesn't always come as a dramatic breakup or heated confrontation. Sometimes it's the slow realization that you've stopped being fully yourself in someone else's presence. That you're filtering your thoughts, silencing your emotions, managing someone's reaction more than you're expressing your truth. That's not love, that's emotional editing. And when the scales of your inner Libra nature begin to tip under that weight, it's time to restore your center. Relationships thrive on honesty, not performance. And while peace is important, peace without truth is just a pause before the storm. This week's cosmic support is encouraging you to step into a more mature version of intimacy, one where truth-telling is a gift, not a threat. Where you don't just stay to avoid being alone, but choose to stay, or go, because doing so aligns with your values. That's where real freedom lives, not in detachment, but in connection that doesn't cost you your voice. There's a quiet teaching passed down for generations, that love without truth becomes control, and truth without love becomes cruelty. You are being asked to walk the space in between, with grace. Not every hard conversation will break a bond. Sometimes, it deepens it. Sometimes, speaking your truth invites the other person to rise and meet you there. But sometimes, it reveals a gap too wide to bridge, and even that is a form of protection. You don't need to fear what's revealed. You only need to trust that anything rooted in truth will remain, and anything that falls away was never meant to follow you into your next chapter. From an astrological lens, your ruling planet Venus is urging you toward deeper alignment. Not just in love, but in the way you allow yourself to be loved. Not with conditions. Not with compromise that cuts into your worth. But with clarity, softness, and self-respect. You are not being punished for needing more, you're being refined by the courage it takes to ask for it. So if you feel the discomfort of emotional shifts this week, don't run from it. Sit with it. Ask yourself gently, is this connection making me feel more like myself, or less? Let the answer guide you, not just in romance, but in every bond that asks for your energy. Love should not require your silence. And when you choose truth in love, even when it's hard, you give others permission to love you honestly too. That's how transformation begins. That's how freedom begins. Every so often, life presents a moment where everything slows just enough for you to hear the whisper beneath the noise, that quiet voice asking if the path you're on still feels right. This week, Libra, that whisper grows louder. The cosmic dance between the Fool and the Star doesn't just invite you to leap into the unknown. It reminds you that your next step isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to dream again after disappointment, and the willingness to trust a version of life you haven't fully seen yet. There's something sacred about beginnings, not the kind where everything's mapped out, but the kind that begin with one honest breath, one clear intention. The Fool represents that fresh start, unburdened by past failures or fear of what could go wrong. Meanwhile, the Star, arriving after a long internal winter, is the quiet promise that healing is happening, even if you can't see the results yet. Together, these two archetypes are guiding you to realign your inner compass, not by force, but by listening inward. Maybe you're standing between something familiar and something that calls you from a distance. The familiar, though comfortable, may feel stagnant. The unknown might feel unnerving, but also deeply magnetic. You don't have to choose in haste. The universe is not rushing you. Instead, it's asking that you get honest about what your soul is actually hungry for. Not what's expected, not what's safe, but what feels alive and true. This is the perfect time to take practical steps that honor that inner inquiry. Write down your vision, not just a goal list, but a feeling map. How do you want to feel when you wake up every morning 3 years from now? What kind of energy do you want to walk into a room with? Who do you see beside you? These aren't just fantasy questions. They're blueprints for decisions you'll be making very soon. Clearing your physical space can also help release emotional clutter. As within, so without, and vice versa. A messy room often reflects scattered focus, and a quiet, clean corner can anchor peace. Try shifting something simple, a drawer, a journal, your digital space. The energy you free up in your surroundings will ripple into your thinking. Let that flow be intentional. And most of all, pay attention to the little rituals that stabilize you. A glass of water first thing in the morning. A moment of silence before responding. A kind word you offer to someone else. These small acts, though seemingly minor, create rhythm, and rhythm creates resilience. You don't need dramatic change to transform your life. You need consistency that reflects who you're becoming. God, in gentle ways, reminds us that we are allowed to restart, not as a sign of failure, but as an act of faith. What's behind you is a chapter, not a sentence of permanence. And you're not required to make perfect plans. You're invited to make sincere ones. Let color be your ally this week. Wear green-blue when you need calm and clear-headedness. Let soft pinks remind you to speak kindly, to yourself most of all. Bring in silver when you want to call on your inner wisdom to help guide decisions that require balance and truth. Even if the road ahead is still forming, don't underestimate the power of this pause. It's not inaction. It's recalibration. You're not lost, you're listening. And every time you take a step that honors your inner truth, even if it's small, you move closer to the life that fits the real you. Keep walking, even if it's slow. Because the star never rises in a sky without darkness, and the fool never jumps without being caught. There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than words. When your questions echo, and your hope starts to flicker under the weight of waiting. But Libra, when Mercury reaches the heart of the Sun on May 29th, what astrologers call a kazemi, it opens a cosmic channel. This is no ordinary alignment. It's as if the universe leans in and says, I heard you. I never stopped listening. You may not have realized it, but while things appeared still on the surface, something was rearranging in the background, and now, the signal is clear. This week's energy carries a promise that can only be understood by those who have waded through spiritual stillness. If you felt unheard, overlooked, or forgotten, you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not off track. You've been preparing. You've been refined through patience. And now, as this planetary energy pierces through the noise, you may receive a message that changes your direction, affirms a path you feared was foolish, or reconnects you with something, or someone, that carries deeper purpose. What makes this energy so profound is its blend of clarity and grace. Justice reminds you that nothing arrives randomly. Every opportunity, conversation, and encounter now is tied to the integrity with which you've walked through your past. This isn't about luck. It's about alignment. If something shows up this week, a job offer, a reconnection, a breakthrough idea, it's not happening to you. It's unfolding through you, because you stayed true to something even when the rewards weren't immediate. At the same time, Temperance quietly asks that you don't rush the message. Healing doesn't always come with fireworks. Often, it moves like water, gentle, persistent, shaping the future without forcing it. This week, try to stay open to the soft signals, a dream that lingers past waking, a text from someone you haven't heard from in years, a sudden sense of calm after days of uncertainty. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations that your soul has been seen, and that the answers are arriving not all at once, but precisely as needed. If you need a sign that it's safe to trust what you feel, let it be this: the number 444 may start appearing more often. This is a sacred code, a quiet divine whisper that you are protected. It's often associated with angelic guidance and grounded action. When you see it, take it as a reminder, not just that you're on the right path, but that you don't have to walk it alone. You are supported, guided, and deeply valued, even in moments when you feel unseen. Mercury Cazimi doesn't ask you to make a bold move, it invites you to pay attention. Something you've overlooked may now make perfect sense. A word you hear might echo like an answer you've waited months to receive. And a door you once thought was closed could quietly unlock, not by force, but by timing. The kind of timing that can't be predicted by logic, only felt by intuition. Take a moment to pause and listen. Step outside at dusk or dawn, when the light feels softer, and simply ask, "What do I need to hear today?" Trust what comes, even if it's a stillness. Because sometimes, the quietest moments carry the loudest truths. And if your heart has been asking, "When will I know?" This week is when the fog begins to lift. Not because everything will suddenly be perfect, but because you'll recognize that you were never waiting in vain. You were being led. And now, finally, that leading becomes visible. The silence breaks. And the answers speak. If you're still here with me, Libra, then I know your heart has been listening, not just with curiosity, but with a depth that recognizes when something is meant for you. Maybe you didn't expect to find yourself feeling so seen today. Maybe you didn't even realize how much you've been carrying. But this is your reminder: you don't have to carry it all. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy, only honest enough to say, "This version of me is still becoming," and that's okay. This week, you're not being asked to maintain balance for everyone else. You're being invited to return to the truth of your own center. Ask yourself, who am I still trying to please? And what part of myself have I silenced to keep the peace? These questions are not here to make you feel guilt, they're here to free you. To remind you that real peace doesn't ask you to disappear. It invites you to show up, fully and kindly, for who you are now. You deserve to rest in a version of balance that isn't built on constant compromise. You deserve to make decisions that reflect not only your logic, but your heart. And if you're brave enough to ask for that kind of alignment, you'll be amazed at how quickly the universe responds. Clarity is on the way, but first, it needs a space to land. Let that space be your willingness to be real with yourself. As you move through the rest of this week, I invite you to gently practice a few things. Wear something in green, blue, or silver around May 29th. Not just because these are your lucky colors, but because they help amplify intuition and clarity. 2 gifts you'll need as Mercury Cazimi lights up your truth. Write a letter of apology, not to anyone else, but to yourself. For the times you stayed quiet when you had something to say. For the moments you put your needs second just to avoid conflict. Burn it as a quiet act of release. You don't need to carry that old story anymore. And if you can, take a moment one evening to sit under soft light, whether it's the moon or a candle, and just listen. Not for answers. Just for your own breath. For the sound of your truth returning home to you. If today's reading spoke to something deep in your soul, let's hold space for it together. Drop a comment below and write, "I accept the truth, and I'm ready to walk the path that's right for me." Or, if you've been seeing repeating numbers, especially 444, share that too. These signs aren't just beautiful, they're personal. Let's interpret them together. And before you go, please know how much I appreciate your presence here. Every time you like, comment, or subscribe to Zodiac Whisper Tarot, you're not just supporting this space. You're becoming part of a community that's rooted in growth, honesty, and transformation. Your energy matters. Your story matters. And I'm honored to walk beside you for a little while on your journey. So take what resonated with you today. Carry it like a lantern. Let it light your next few steps. And trust, always trust, that balance isn't something you chase outside of yourself. It's something you build inside, moment by moment, as you return again and again to your own sacred truth.